Hello and welcome to Becoming a Person of Influence, session number 3. My name is Sharon Shaw. I'm the Director of Education here at PSA Security Network. For those of you who may not have attended the earlier sessions 1 and 2 of Becoming a Person of Influence, all of these sessions have been recorded and are available online. So if you visit bypsa.com/leadership, you'll be able to download the workbook and follow along with us today, as well as view sessions 1 and 2. Again, this session will also be recorded, so if for some reason you have to leave early, or if there's someone on your team that's unable to make it today, don't sweat. They'll be able to watch it at their convenience online. So with us presenting again today is our President and CEO, Bill Bozeman, who again is a certified founding partner of the John Maxwell team. And this program is based on John Maxwell's Becoming a Person of Influence. You should all have your workbooks open so you can follow along. And we're going to begin again with session 3, which is on page 23 of your workbook. Now, for those of you who have questions, we will be online longer this time to allow for a live Q&A session where you can ask Bill any questions that you have on your mind. Similarly, we will be spending more time during the presentation process to make sure we do a thorough job in explaining the different bits of information and filling in the blanks for your workbook. So with that, I want to welcome our President and CEO, Bill Bozeman.
Hey, good morning, and thank you for attending today. Speaking of thanking you, I would be curious as to why you're here today. I'm thanking you for attending, and I'm wondering why you're attending. Is it on your own choice, and or did someone suggest that you attend this morning? You know, if that's the case, then really you owe them a thank you. Simply because if you're an engineer, you could be doing engineering work. If you're a salesperson, you could be out selling something. If you're an admin, you could be doing your administration work, but yet you're here. So I'm delighted. Thank you very much. And remember to thank whoever it is who guided you in our direction. We're going to start off, as Sharon said, with session 3. An influencer. My first comment on Mr. Maxwell's program is, you know, I didn't write the program, I studied the program, and hopefully I can do a good job for you. But as I said in an earlier session, I would put this a positive influencer. Because once again, just because you're an influencer doesn't mean you're a positive influencer. I'll give you a great example. I recently purchased some music on from Apple. And I put in my, you know, the analytics. I put in what I liked, you know, music, New Orleans music, that type of thing. And they sent me a free song from a rap artist who was from New Orleans, which I really wasn't that interested in, but it was free. So I listened to it. And this is a very influential young man, very famous. I will not mention his name, but everyone knows this young man. He's all over the newspapers, all over the press. He has a tremendous influence in the community that I live in. And this was the most horrible song. The song was about putting a cap in people's you-know-what, and about selling drugs, and about very, very derogatory comments about women. I mean, the whole thing was just horrible, and I'm not a prude. I'm not a prude. It was horrible, but yet he has tremendous influence. And I think this is a bad thing. I'm not for censorship. I don't want to get on my high horse. But what we're focusing on is having a positive influence. I think John missed that one. Maybe I'll send him an email. So how do you grow an organization? Well, first you have to grow people. Can't do it by yourself, guys. Can't do it by yourself. How do you grow people? Well, you have to grow yourself. And that's some of the things we're going to discuss today, you know, giving up that control. How do you do it? When do you do it? Can you handle it emotionally? Let's move on down the line. Success is knowing your purpose in life. It's growing to your maximum potential, and it's sowing the seeds that benefit others. Once again, it's a lonely existence if you're only by yourself, if you're only trying to improve yourself for your personal benefit. That is really not what this is about. There's a great saying by Zig Ziglar. You always have everything in life you want if you help enough people get what they want. And that is a very, very true thing. I think you'll find if you're sharing and opening, you're in a much better position, you know, to help people as you go along. So what can you do? Well, you can do nothing. And some people choose, as far as leadership is concerned, to do nothing. Or you can do like this rapper, you can actually make things worse. You can make things worse for your family and worse for your friends and influence your friends to shoot people and go to the penitentiary. Or you can do like we're trying to do. You can make things better. I mean, you influence people. You can make things better for your business, for your friends, for your family, for your church, and that's the direction that we're going to go in. Let's move to the second page, which is number 7. As an influencer, you navigate for people. If you look at that bottom sentence right underneath number 7, top executives spend roughly 90% of their time with the messiness of people problems. I'm not sure I would have worded it exactly like that, but as I look back as to what I do on a daily basis, I wouldn't necessarily say it's the messiness of people problems, but certainly if you're not a people person, certainly if you don't understand people, certainly if you don't like people, you can have a heck of a time influencing them positively. There are those who see problems ahead and avoid it, and that is good. There are those that can experience the problem and fix it. And there are those that cannot see the problem or fix it, and they become overwhelmed. So a question is, have you ever been overwhelmed? I was recently overwhelmed. I had just finished a WebEx. I received several emails, one of them which was disturbing. I received a text which was disturbing. You know, the phone was ringing off the hook, and I just stood up and said, oh my gosh, you know, I am overwhelmed. I think, let's be honest, I think we all, no one's perfect. We all get overwhelmed at one time or another. It's just really how you handle it. I mean, how you handle it. Everybody has a threshold for this type of thing. I think it's very important that you understand what your threshold is, and also understand that if you're smart about this and you study this, you can improve your threshold. I don't believe that there are any really significant, important, positive influences who have a very low threshold for getting overwhelmed. And that's one of the things that we hope to work with you on. A leader is one who sees more than others see. A leader is one who sees farther than others see. A leader is one who sees before others see. One of the keys to this is not necessarily being smart. It's really giving yourself the opportunity to do so. Allow yourself. Have the confidence. If you shut this part of your brain down or your emotions down, if you don't think that you have a vision, you never will. You've got to allow yourself to do so. Is this the next quote? Law of navigation. Anyone can steer a ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. Is this not ironic, considering what just happened on that Carnival cruise off the coast of Italy? Read that again. Anyone can steer a ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. In session 2, I believe I mentioned the fact that the mayor of the city of New Orleans folded under the pressure, became totally overwhelmed, basically went insane at a time of crisis. Let's take a look at the gentleman that crashed into the reef off the coast of Italy. I'm sure by now you're all familiar with this. He actually abandoned the ship with hundreds of people still on the ship, people dead on the deck. Prior to this, he didn't seem to have any character flaw. However, when the pressure built up, when things went wrong, he became totally overwhelmed, jumped into a lifeboat, and sped onto the coast. By the way, when the Coast Guard found out about that, they forced him back onto the ship. I didn't realize it, although my son-in-law is a maritime attorney. You know, he told me there's actually laws about this type of thing. So what a wonderful example of not being able to handle it. I wonder if there are tests that can be given, psychological tests. I know they do this for people in the military, of course, and people who participate in submarine warfare. Can they psychologically handle the press of being underwater in that tube? I wonder if they have tests for these type of captains. Unfortunately, this poor gentleman certainly failed. You know, one of the things that leaders do exceptionally well that's not in this particular text is the ability to gather information from multiple sources that are creditable and assist with planning. At our company, I believe we do a pretty darn good job of strategic planning. We use a process called the Balanced Scorecard, which is a very famous business book and business study. We gave it our own name, which we call SAP, which is Strategic Action Planning. And this is where we gather input on the industry, on our particular situation, our place in time and space, and plan accordingly. In order to do that, you need to listen as much or more than talk. It's a great process, by the way. If you're interested, we're going to be teaching some of those classes at PSA Tech. Let's move on to the next. Navigating for others means experience. Been there, done that. Success. Been there, done that successfully. As an example, I mean, it's common sense, but I mean, would you seek advice? Would you choose a mentor that ran a terrible systems integration business that had filed for bankruptcy and his customers were disgusted with the performance of the company? Well, of course not. When I seek mentorship, which I do very, very frequently, because I realize my strengths and weaknesses and what I know and what I don't know, and there's a lot I don't know, I call out to successful people. Number 3, responsibility. I'm willing to take others on the trip. Number 4, communication, encouraging, honest. And it can't be every once in a while, ladies and gentlemen. It has to be continual. And number 5, partnership. We go together as a team. We help each other. I really try very, very hard. I know many of you probably have experienced this. I certainly experienced it when I owned my companies, and that was the us versus them. In particular, I found some friction between our sales department, I had 10 salesmen, and our service department, where for some reason when things didn't go well in the field, they tended to point fingers and blame each other. Well, if John hadn't sold something that doesn't even exist, Bill, I wouldn't be in this predicament that I'm in this afternoon. John would say, you know, well, if Mary had gone to technical school and had gotten that certification and had been a little bit smarter, then we wouldn't have this problem. Everyone installs this equipment. We try very, very hard at PSA, and I would encourage you to try in your company to make sure that every department is on an equal plane. You all work together. You all pull in the same direction with the same goal. At our company, our sales department is no more important than our accounting department, the engineering department, customer service department. We are all on the same page. We're all on the same wave, riding the wave together, trying to get to the exact same destination. Now, here's the problem with that. Normally, someone is in charge of a company. And normally, like me, that person has a strongest area of expertise. Let's just say you're an electrical engineer. Do you tend to favor your engineering department? Let's just say you're very entrepreneurial, a sales type. Do you tend to favor the sales department? Or let's just say you're a CFO type. You have a degree in accounting, you're a CPA, and you're really focused on cranking down those numbers, so you tend to run everything by the numbers, which may alienate the sales force, right, or even customer service. It really is a balancing act, and you as a leader need to make sure that you're in charge of that balancing act and not favoring any one group over the other, or you won't get everyone riding on the same wave at the same time. You'll have people pulling in different directions, which is in no one's best interest. A comment that comes up that I thought was pretty good: when you lead people, it's slower than when you go it alone. Going it alone is a very, very finite trip. There's only so much a lady or a man can accomplish all by themselves. It sounds like common sense, but yet it seems that occasionally hard-driven people tend to focus an awful lot on themselves. And this doesn't lead, it's somewhat ironic that it doesn't even lead to self-improvement as much as you might think if you're totally focused on yourself. So I don't want to be redundant, but I want to influence people. We had a great employee here whose name I won't mention several years ago, hasn't been with us for 4 or 5 years, that was extremely talented. And I really respected this individual's talent from a technical perspective. This individual knew the latest VMS, really understood, you know, all the enterprise software that was out there, made a study of it. But this individual didn't want to share that information. And I used to have to pull it out of this person, and other people would come and say, well, I know that, he or she really knows this stuff, but Bill, it's like, and I don't know if it was job security. I don't know if it was fear of rejection. I never was able to figure out what it was. But when it came to us parting ways, that was the main reason. Let's go to number 8. An influencer connects with people. Credibility and communication equal connection. And it's very important. And you can say, well, I wasn't born with that talent. I just, I'm shy, I'm introverted. I'm just not a good communicator. Well, certainly some people have more of a gift than others, but I don't believe there's anyone who can't improve their communication and credibility skills. And particularly, credibility is simply a matter of having some discipline and doing the right thing. You have an opportunity to get a big, huge job. This opportunity requires you to pay a kickback to a contractor or to a politician. That's credibility. You don't do that. That's simple. The communication skills might be a little more difficult. It might take some work on your part. You may have to attend seminars. You may have to listen to tapes. You may have to do some hard work to improve your speaking skills if that's not in your bailiwick. Let's go quickly down this list. When people connect, they communicate. Relationships, people listen because of who you know. Now, I guess when you've been doing this as long as I have, doing the type of jobs that I have been doing for decades, you tend to know a lot of people. So this is something I'm halfway decent at. I know a lot of people. I had one this morning call and say, Bill, I'm blah, blah, blah. Do you know the top dog at AMAG? And I said, yes, I do. So I get a lot of those calls, and I bet you too. It might not be the top dog at AMAG. It may be who is a security director at this retail chain, or who do you know who's in charge of accounts payable? That's a big one. That one I used to use a lot when I was an integrator. So this is an important skill. You might not think it is. No one wants to be a name dropper, but it's important that you know people, positive people who can help and influence others, so you in turn can introduce. Number 2, sacrifice. People listen to those who have suffered. I'm using myself as an example only because I know myself, and it happens. I have most certainly suffered as an integrator. I have been there. I have been in your shoes. I tell a funny story. Even my mother to this day laughs about this. She's 85, and she said it became a subconscious thing. On payroll day, which was every other Friday, I would bring a large bottle of Maalox because my stomach would go crazy on payroll day, because at the time I had 65 employees. It was a big payroll, and quite frankly, I suffered through that. It made me nervous. So you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. When you're dealing with people, it's fine to show some vulnerability. If you come off as a stuffed shirt who thinks you're perfect, I'm not sure that works for anybody. It seems to work pretty good for Donald Trump, though. So maybe if I grew some hair like Donald Trump, I could be more stuffy and condescending like he seems to be. Okay, number 3, insight. People listen because what you know. You know who the most quoted person in the history of America is? I didn't know this. I read this. Benjamin Franklin. Why? Well, the guy knew a lot. Number 4, experience. People listen because what you have achieved. I read all of Jack Welch's books. Of course, the ex-chief executive officer of General Electric. He really had an amazing run. Why did I read those books? Well, it's because what the man achieved. Same thing with you. People will listen to you if you are successful, and you do it correctly, and you do it ethically, and you do it honestly, and you do it with a little bit of class, and you bring people up with you. You will be surprised at how many people will be interested in what you have to say. Ability. People will listen because what you are able to do. Why is it that Peyton Manning gets so many television commercials? Well, he's been able to do a lot. Number 6, people listen. Intuition, because of what you sense. It is nice to have positive intuition. Number 7, character. People listen because of your integrity. We have covered that. I don't want to say this is common sense. It is common sense, but yet how many of us violate this? How often do we have to open up the newspaper and see the local mayor, your city councilman, your congressman, going to prison or being indicted? What is that about? Where's the integrity? Humility. People listen because of your heart. Well, maybe this is why I find Donald Trump to be a little difficult to take. He's not the most, he's not the most humble person. He seems to be a good person, and his children are doing well, and I think that means a lot. But gosh darn, I think most people want somebody that's just a tad bit of humility. Relevance. People listen to you if you identify with their needs. You'll identify with their needs if you listen to what their needs are. And number 10, conviction. People listen because of your passion. As we hire people to grow our company at PSA, passion is always an important variable that we take a look at. And my best example of that, of course, is one of my favorites of all time, Winston Churchill. So as you go to the next section, why do people listen to you? List your top 2 responses. I would encourage you not to do this now, but when this session is over, if you've got an extra 10 or you have an extra 15 minutes, or you can even do this privately if you're by yourself, write down why people listen to you, or possibly why in the past you know that you have something to offer and maybe people didn't listen. Did you offer the information in a condescending manner? Were you, I know I'm right and I know you don't know? Was that your attitude? So check yourself out privately. How to connect with people? Number 1, go to their world, not your world. Connecting with people means finding their agenda first. And of course you communicate from the heart. You have to care about what they have to say. And if you don't care and you make believe you care, boy, you have to be a really good actor, And that's really not the good way to run a business. Moving down the line, number 3, find the key to the life of the people that you're working with. I'm not saying that you have to know every single hobby and every personal problem that an individual has, but if an individual that's working with you or for you is simply a product, is simply a number, it comes through. Now, you do have to have the discipline, and I have experienced this many, many times. You have to have the discipline when someone comes in to say, okay, I understand you have some personal issues and some personal problems, but you must also understand that we're all here for a reason, and that reason is that, to help this organization and to help this company. We'll do everything we can to help you, but you in turn have to understand that you are certainly here for a reason. Moving along to session number 4, an influencer empowers others. Questions to ask before you empower others. Number 1, do I believe in people and feel they are my organization's most valuable, appreciable asset? So ask yourself that question. Do you think in your company that your most valuable asset is the enterprise access control software that you're offering? Or is it the person who is engineering that system? Or is it the person who is selling that system? Or is it the team that's maintaining that system? Or is it the piece of software? Ask yourself that question. Do I believe that empowering others can accomplish more than an individual achievement? Number 3, do I actively search for potential leaders to empower? If you want to grow your company, you have no choice. You cannot do everything. You cannot be an expert in everything. You need to admit that, and you need to give control. If you're not building leaders, if you're not building middle management in your company will not grow. Your $3 million company today will be a $3 million company 10 years from now. Number 5, would I be willing to invest time developing people who have leadership potential? Hopefully you're attending this, and that answer would be yes. Number 6, would I be willing to let others get credit for what I taught them? Hopefully you would. That is a sign not only of leadership, but that is a sign of maturity. Number 7, do I allow others freedom of my personality and process, or do I have to be in control? Okay, let's elaborate on this one a bit, guys. I know that there's some owners on the phone. I know that there's some entrepreneurs on the phone. I know there's some directors of engineering, and they're really powerful personalities. Who would that be, right? The VP of sales, the sales managers. By nature, some of these individuals, these entrepreneurs, these directors, by nature they have, and by training, they have personalities where they enjoy being in control. Go back to my sports analogy. I can tell you that Drew Brees enjoys being in control of the football team. But I will also tell you, he is the first one to give credit. He is the first one to allow others to benefit from his skill set. And this is a toughie. I have struggled with this personally, in particularly when I had my companies and they were relatively small. I wanted to be in control, and it finally dawned on me that if I was going to grow my companies, I had to spread out and let others run the departments. Number 8, would I be willing to publicly give my authority and influence to potential leaders? Number 9, would I let others work me out of a job? That is a very interesting question. That might be one that you guys can discuss privately as well. Number 10, would I be willing to hand the leadership baton to the people I empowered and truly root for them? In other words, do I have to have the glory, or will I pass the glory on? If you want to grow your company, you're going to need to pass that glory on. If you're a glory hog, if you're a publicity hound, and that's the most important thing to you, you won't be able to build a team around you that will stick together very long. Empowerment decisions I made concerning an assistant. This is kind of interesting. It's getting into detail where, number 1, I need to know everything. What came to mind was Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. They said that Jimmy Carter was hour by hour. He was the hardest working president in the history of the United States. I don't know how the man did this, but for some reason he was able to work 18-hour days, 7 days a week. And the guy hardly had to sleep at all. And they just said it was amazing. The cooking staff in the White House, no one could believe how much this guy studied and how much he worked on detail. By the way, I think his formal education, I believe he was a nuclear engineer, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was an Annapolis graduate. I know he's a brilliant man. He's a brilliant man. I mean, I didn't vote for him, but I certainly respected his intelligence and his hard work ethic. But, in just Bill's humble opinion, he was a terrible president. Let's take Ronald Reagan. They said that Ronald Reagan was the opposite of Jimmy Carter. He took naps. He worked a 6-hour day. But yet, he has gone down in history as a remarkable president. Sure, he made his mistakes. We all do. But if you compare the legacy of these two gentlemen, nothing to do with your political convictions, one was a delegator. One never did say he knew everything. He didn't try and control everything. If you look at number 3, I'm determined not to become the primary source of communication. Number 4, I am determined to let someone represent me. I am determined to stay with my strengths. I'll give you a personal example. Yesterday, we finished up a board meeting in Denver. We have quarterly board meetings. One of our board meetings, a gentleman named Tim Fury out of Atlanta, is a very bright, process-oriented individual, extremely process-oriented. He really enjoys that. And I don't want to use bad language, but I suck at that. And I realize that. And throughout my career, I've always partnered up with a strong, process-oriented individual who could keep me under control. So Tim came in, and I attended the first part of the meeting, which lasted approximately an hour. He was generous enough to come here and share his time with the PSA staff, going over processes and ways to evaluate and measure these processes. And I determined an hour into the meeting that I was going to go with my strengths. I had several important people wanting to talk to me. I wanted to talk to the president of Gory Reagan, Charlie Reagan, a friend of mine. He needed me. Several other people did. And I said, well, I can sit here and listen to these process improvement procedures, or I can go with where my strengths are. I've got total faith in Steve King and our process people here in Denver. I've got total faith in Tim Fury. I don't know how the hell to do it. Let me focus on what I'm supposed to be doing here to help the company the most. Empowerment, number 1, seeing the potential of the individual and the proper fit for the job. Now look, sometimes this is going to happen. Someone's going to come into your office and say, I want to be a blank. Possibly it's an engineer or a technical person who says, hey Joe, I really want to be a salesman. Or it could be the other way around. I really want to do this or that, and they're just not good. This is part of being a leader, is being able to communicate the facts as they are without bias, sit that person down, and get them into the niche where they can be most successful, they can be the happiest, and in turn do what's best for the company. And it might not be switching trying to stick a square peg into a round hole. Number 2, saying words that encourage, equip, and empower that person. I'm not afraid to discipline people. I don't mind being disciplined myself, but I would say that the ratio of disciplined, focused communication versus encouragement and empowerment should be heavily tilted towards the encouragement, empowerment. However, you do have to have the intestinal fortitude to discipline people when they deserve it. Number 3, sharing your knowledge, experience, and influence with the team. We've gone over this over and over. I don't want to be redundant. Hopefully it's sinking in. Number 4, showing others you believe in and giving power to that person. We're moving on now to number 10. An influencer reproduces others. Some of these statistics are interesting. 85% of the leaders attract followers. That's a high percentage. 10% of the leaders attract other leaders. That would be, I gave an example earlier. I was very impressed with the Jack Welch, the ex-CEO of General Electric, and there's several other CEOs that are leaders that I follow. I read what they have to say. I listen to what they have to say, so I'm attracted to them. So that is a leader attracting another leader. But look at this statistic, 5%? 5% of the leaders reproduce other leaders. Wow, that's a very low percentage. And I'm working very hard not to be in that percentage. So how can you reproduce other leaders? Number 1, model good leadership, i.e. role model. Number 2, you're doing it today. This is why I said please thank whoever sent you to this conference today, because you could be out doing something else. But either through your own decision or the decision of someone else, you're spending this hour with us this morning. Number 2, provide leadership training, and that's what this is all about. Number 3, provide the resources. I mean, PSA is trying with their PSA Leadership Institute to provide the resources to make you a better leader, to once again, to benefit everyone that you touch. Provide leadership experiences, number 4. And number 5, provide a growth environment. So what the heck is that? What is a growth environment? Well, a growth environment is putting yourself and your team in a challenging environment. This is what I feel the board of directors does with me. They don't just let me say, everything is good, Bill, and everything is good at PSA. They say, you need to do this, and what about that, and what about this, and let's discuss that, and how it would work with this specific strategy. I am constantly in a challenged environment, and this is a good thing. Number 1, you don't want to be bored, and number 2, this is how you grow a company and provide better services. You have to be able to get out of that comfort zone. If you just stick there in your comfort zone, once again, that $3 million company will be a $3 million company 10 years from now. You also have to provide a nurturing environment. We talked about a little bit about that in the first segment. I'm not even sure if nurturing is the right word, but certainly one where when somebody does make a mistake and they come in and say, I should have never tried to do this. I apologize, this, that, and the other. Say, guy, let's see where the mistake was made. Let's analyze why the mistake was made. Did you not have the proper training? Did you go outside of your area of expertise? Let's correct it. Let's not do it again. That's a definition of nurturing. Not that, well, you're an idiot and I'm pulling you out of this and I'm putting you back here. And, it's also a good thing not to be the smartest guy in the room. I never really want to be the smartest guy in the room. I mean, if I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm in the wrong room. I want to be learning from people who are smarter than me. Lucky for me, there's a lot of them. So I go to meetings, and I tend to, my friends are smart guys, and I'm always looking to learn things from smart people. So you don't necessarily have to be the big shot. You don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. Strive not to be the smartest guy in the room. That way you can learn something. A growth environment is a place where others are ahead of you. You are still challenged. Your focus is forward. I'm on number 4 now. The atmosphere is affirming. Number 5, you are out of your comfort zone. You wake up excited. Okay, I've got a story here. Once again, I'm not going to use a name. And by the way, I'm not making these stories up. These are legit stories. So a PSA integrator of 20 some odd years, probably a PSA member for 15 years, now is in a different business. I don't want to tell you what business it is because it might tip you off as to who this gentleman is, and I don't want to embarrass him. And he called me and said something, blah, blah, this, blah, blah, that, and, you know, kids know each other, all that good stuff. And I said, well, how do you like your new business? And he said, Bill, I absolutely love it. He said, you know, for all that time I was in, you know, the security business, I kind of dreaded when I woke up in the morning. He said, now when I wake up in the morning, I'm excited. I love this business. And I kind of felt sorry for him. I really did. And my advice to anyone would be, you know, if you wake up in the morning, you dread what you're doing, do something else. I wake up every morning and I'm excited. I'm occasionally wake up frustrated and excited, but I'm always excited. And if you don't like what you're doing, how can you be good at it? Wake up excited. Number 7, failure is not feared. If failure was feared, I'd be the scaredest guy in the room because I failed quite a few times. You learn from your failures. Not every company I started worked. Not every job that we tried to install was installed to the customer satisfaction. Not every employee I mentored loved me. But if you're scared of your own shadow, if you're scared to make a mistake, if you're scared to fail, there's no way you can accomplish anything because you're going to have a certain percentage of failure. Now, the key, of course, is to have more success than failures. And the higher the percentage of success versus failures, the more successful and the more influential you'll be. But if your goal is a risk-adverse, I ain't never going to fail goal, you ain't never going to accomplish anything. So you have to have a little bit of intestinal fortitude to suck it up and say, gosh darn it, I never should have hired that axe murderer. Okay, I never should have tried to sell that product that I knew wouldn't work. You make your mistakes, you improve, and you move on. Number 8, others are growing around you. It makes me feel really, really good, and it's a personal perk of the job that I have to see people who really are a lot better than they are this year than they were last year. Oh, and by the way, it makes my job easier. It makes my job a whole lot easier. My goal is to basically walk around and you know, get information from other people in departments who are smarter than me and telling me what to do. I go back to the board, work on the strategy, and take it from there. That's my eventual goal. Number 9, there's a willingness to change. We're not going to go into the whole change deal because I've been through that over and over. If you're change adverse, God bless you and good luck. And number 10, growth is modeled and expected. I was just told by my boss and my bosses that they would like to see our company grow at a more rapid rate than it's currently growing. So I've accepted that challenge, and I think it's a good challenge, and I think it makes good logical sense, and so that's exactly what we're going to do. So I think we're pretty much on schedule. A friend of mine and an excellent systems integrator in Philadelphia named Matthew Ladd, who runs a company called the Protection Bureau, who's been with us for a number of years, he called me up or sent me an email, I forget which, and he said, hey, Bill, how come you got everybody off the phone so fast, and how come there was no extra activity after the event, and how come there's no Q&A? So Matt, I just want you to know I listened. Sharon's going to take us to this next piece.
Thank you, Bill. And for those of you who are on a tight time frame, now is the time where you might want to drop off. But for those of you who have questions, please utilize your chat feature and then use the drop down to say ask staff a question, and we will be fielding those now. Also on the screen you should see a slide here talking about the PSA Leadership Institute. I know we've been asking you all to start opting in. If you have not opted in, we encourage you to do so just by going to, again, buypsa.com/leadership. Well, why opt in? Eventually, those videos and emails and all of the things that you've been receiving from the PSA Leadership Institute will stop reaching you if you do not opt in. We want to make sure that we're sending information to those of you who want it. So obviously, by attending this webinar, you're showing some interest. If you have not opted in, please do so. Again, if you have not also received a free copy of John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, you can email us at edu@psasecurity.com, and we will be happy to send one to you free of charge. So with that, I want to turn over some questions. We have gotten a couple in here, Bill. The first question we got in is, how do you handle mistakes without losing your credibility? So if you make a mistake as a leader, how do you handle that without losing your credibility and level of influence?
Well, Sharon, I think I mentioned just a few moments ago, I make mistakes every day. We all do. You know, I don't believe making a mistake you'll lose your credibility, I mean, within reason. The gentleman who ran into the reef off the coast of Italy, he has lost his credibility. His credibility will never be back. The captain of the Valdez who was DUI, ran into the reef and spilled oil. His credibility is gone. But the day-to-day smaller mistakes, picking out the wrong product or accidentally, hiring someone who just doesn't work out and everyone knows it very quickly. Once again, if you don't take a little bit of risk, you can't get ahead. I do not believe you lose credibility unless you do something horrific. This could be, as I mentioned earlier, something, my definition of horrific is doing something that's not stealing. Stealing from the company, your credibility is gone. Sexually abusing someone in the office, your credibility is gone. Consistently lying, going to the movies when you're supposed to be at a seminar and your employees or your staff knowing about it, your credibility is gone. It's common sense. I would just say, if you don't be afraid to make a mistake, though. Just don't make moral and ethical mistakes. Business mistakes, okay, you make them and you try not to make them again. But don't be afraid to make a mistake. Just don't run a cruise ship onto a coral reef when you know you shouldn't be in that particular area.
And Bill, how much of your time as a business leader would you say you spend, percentage-wise, mentoring and advising your staff?
Sharon, I'm not even sure that's, I don't mean to be condescending. I'm not even sure that's a real good question, because I think every job is different. I think if I answered the question, it might not fit the ladies and gentlemen who are on this call. As an example, that for my particular job, how much time do I spend? Oh gosh, I don't want to avoid the question. 75% of my time is spent doing that. But if I'm the leader of an engineering department, it might not be 75%. It might be 25%. If I'm Joe Nucio, who's got 1,000 employees, it might be 90%. I think it really depends upon the job you have and the circumstances that you have. So there is no cookie cutter answer for that. I will say this: everyone, even if you're not considered, quote, a top flight or top level manager or, quote, a leader, I think everyone should spend part of their day helping other people get ahead. And that is, in fact, leadership.
Okay. And what if, Bill, you were placed in a position of leadership that you grew into, or that you were just assigned, that maybe you don't feel deserving of or qualified for? How do you handle that pressure and adapt to becoming a leader on the spot?
So you're in a, let me see that, so you're in a leadership position that you do not feel you deserve or you're not qualified for. Ouch. Tough. We sometimes, PSA has integrators all over, and sometimes we'll see a case where someone is running a company that probably couldn't be or shouldn't be. That's just a fact. And sometimes this job is thrust on them, by an owner who wants to retire, and he said, "Hey, Joe," or "Hey, Mary, you're the boss now," and they're not ready, or they're not qualified, et cetera, and they just get stuck in the position. Sometimes we see in second and third generation owners, where the son or the daughter or the granddaughter of a guy who founded a company, a quarter of a century ago, is thrust into the position because of family issue. And it's tough. Because you obviously, if you're offered, more money and more prestige and this, that, and the other, there's not a whole lot of people would turn it down. But I think it's really, I think if you really believe in your heart that you can't handle it and it's not for you, and you don't have either the passion or the commitment, or I don't want to say the intellectual capability, because I really believe if you have the passion and the commitment, you can overcome almost anything. But if you don't have that passion and commitment, I think you owe it to whomever owns that company, even if it's yourself, to say, you know what, there's someone else better to be in this spot. Maybe I can be a junior manager or second in charge or third in charge. But I do feel for you if you're in that position, and I don't think you should stay in that position unless you are willing to really try and get better and really make the effort and really make the commitment. If not, you're better off either finding someone in your company who has that commitment and that passion and that skill set, or go outside of the company and find someone. You don't want to sit there if you can't handle it. That's just not fair to the customers, and it's not fair to the people who work at that company or the people who own the company.
Thank you, Bill. And that is all the questions that we have for today. So we are going to conclude this session. If you have any questions, feedback, concerns, suggestions for us, again, email us at edu@psasecurity.com. And please don't forget to opt in at buypsa.com/leadership. We want to thank you again for your time today. And for those of you who are customers and owners, we appreciate your loyalty in your business and hope you have a wonderful year in 2012. Thank you.